what it is.
Let's bring in, you know him, you love him. Bill O'Reilly is joining us this morning here. I don't know, do you want to weigh in on the football game at all, Bill?
It was a good game. You know, Trump is saying it's not Alabama versus Ohio State. That's
right.
Accurate. You know, these morons who have Twitter, this is, you know, this is a game changer for civilization. Now every stupid person has a megaphone. It used to be that dumb people were in the back of the classroom.
Right.
Now they are in the front, and we have to just bear it. But everybody knew what he was talking about.
Well, speaking of Twitter, Bill, everyone is talking about the Secretary of State. Is not officially announced, but very likely picked to be Exxon's Rex Tillerson. He's now obviously emerging as the frontrunner for this job. Potentially John Bolton as deputy. What are your initial thoughts when this was announced yesterday?
I don't know Tillerson at all. To me, it's a Putin play. He's a pal of Putin. It looks like the strategy of the Trump administration is if they can neutralize Putin, get him to be a little pro-American, then that'll help in Iran because Putin has got a lot of power in Tehran. And so they're going to try to win him over and make him an ally rather than an enemy. And I think that's what the Tillerson thing is.
Is that his Achilles heel, though? You heard Senator John McCain last night at the Army-Navy game saying that, look, we want to give him the benefit of the doubt, Trump in his pick. However, confirmation could be tough, and depending on how closely he is tied to Vladimir Putin, is that going to be a problem for him?
I don't think so. McCain is anti-Trump. I like Senator McCain and respect him, but I don't think he looks at these things objectively. To me, if he nominates Tillerson, he will get confirmed.
Do you think Mitt Romney was ever actually considered by President-elect Trump? What do you think was going on there behind the scenes? And what do you think Mitt Romney's thinking this morning?
I don't understand the Romney play. You know, I get to talk to some people off the record. They call me on both parties, and I'm respectful, and if they say it's off the record, it's off the record. So I don't ever say anything about it, but I could never really define why Romney was there. I don't know. I have to say, I'd like
Isn't
to
it
know,
obvious,
but
though?
I don't know.
To me, it seems obvious. I've been saying this on the show for weeks. I feel like it was a public shaming. It was he went after him viciously, and we're going to drag him through this process. He's going to come to the tower. He's going to
kiss my ring.
He's going to kiss my ring, and at the end of the day, it was never serious.
Do you think that's true?
Maybe it was an ego play, but I think it's unfair to assign that motivation to Trump without any data. I mean, you might be right, but it's speculation.
Bill, you mentioned his Rex Tillerson's ties to Vladimir Putin, business dealings. One person who's never been tied to Vladimir Putin is Ambassador John Bolton, who's been a critic of Putin, of the Iran deal, now rumored to be the potential deputy with Rex Tillerson. What would that tell you about that pairing, about what they're hoping to do at the State Department?
If Bolton is the top assistant, then that says that Bolton's in there for quality control, so-called quality control. So that Tillerson is inexperienced, he's a businessman, he's not a diplomat, so that eyes and ears would be Bolton. And Bolton would, report back to the president, not a spy, but kind of a counter and a check on Tillerson because of his inexperience.
Well, we've gotten a better sense of who he's putting in some of these top positions. It's beginning to fill up, Bill. What does that tell you about the direction he's wanting to take this country and how he's going to be as our next commander-in-chief?
It's a hawkish direction. You have to understand that the reason that the Obama administration got in so much trouble abroad is that crew basically said, we want it off the world stage. We want out. And they retreated. And ISIS filled the gap, and Putin took advantage, and Iran took advantage of the retreat. So it was a retreat. So now the Trump people say, we're not going to retreat. We're going to retrench. And we're going to bring in the tough guy generals, so if anybody messes with us, they're going to pay a price. There was no price to pay by defying Barack Obama. There will be a price to pay by defying President Trump.
Bill, you've seen cabinets formed under previous administrations. How would you characterize this one so far in historical precedent? Stronger team of rivals. How does this one live up to previous Republicans or presidents writ large?
Again, it's speculative. You can't really say how effective the cabinet's going to be until you see how effective Donald Trump's going to be.
Right.
I mean, Trump gets in, and then it's going to be, I know Trump enough to tell the American people that he's going to have an opinion, and his opinion is going to override that of the advisors. So it just depends on how Trump is going to handle himself, because everybody else is going to be taking orders from him. It's not like these guys have unilateral power. They don't. They're going to be told what to do. Now, as far as execution is concerned, they all seem to be very competent and successful in how they've handled their careers. I don't have a beef there. But it's about Donald Trump, and it's about what he decides to do.
Well, tonight on the Fox News channel, Legends and Lies returns. We have a little sneak preview here. We'll play a little clip of it, and we'll get you to tell us what we can expect.
It'd be really helpful to him in areas that he's not as familiar with.
And we asked Mike Huckabee about that early in the show, about what he thinks about Ambassador Bolton. This is what Governor Huckabee had to say about that pairing.
Brilliant choice, because John not only knows where the bodies are buried, he probably buried a few. And my guess is, knowing John, when he gets there, he'll bury quite a few more, and he may take the fog out of Foggy Bottom, which is very, very important.
He knows where they're buried, and he may have buried a few. But no, the State Department bureaucracy is notoriously one of the worst, and that's one of the assets that Bolton has, is he knows how it works, why it doesn't work, and how to go at it. And then you've got someone like Tillerson who has the relationships internationally on a business level. And many people have said, he's a businessman. That's a good thing. He hasn't been in government. Yeah. Same thing with Trump.
And maybe trying to figure out the relationship with Russia isn't such a bad thing either, especially when it comes to fighting terrorism and ISIS.
We're going to talk to General Jack Keane about this, and and about this team surrounding themselves with generals on this world stage. And people were upset about this idea of all these generals around. Well, now we're going to get to the heart of it with General Jack Keane coming up.
Speaking of that, general outrage from the left over some of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks.
3 generals so far. Is that too many generals?
People have been, mired in controversy about the number of generals.
Oh, Mr. Barnacle, tell me why military leadership is such a bad thing. General Jack Keane here to weigh in next on Fox.
There he is, sir. Plus, The View has gotten so bad that even Barbara Walters doesn't want to watch anymore.
Seriously? Such a bad thing. Well, here to discuss is Fox News military analyst and retired General Jack Keane. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for being up with us this morning.
Good to be with you, Abby.
All right, so what is the concern here? I mean, you're talking about generals that have reached the pinnacle of their career. What is the problem with them in the cabinet?
Well, I guess what they're implying is there's some kind of militarization of the national security function, and as a result of that, I guess the implication would be that we would be more likely to use military force than other civilians who are running these major functions in the government.
Is that true?
Well, no, actually, it's quite the opposite, to be frank. These people that are coming into government now are some of the most experienced general officers we've had going back to World War II. They're battle-hardened, 15 years of war. They've got proven experience. I think they're being selected largely because they're the best athletes on the field, and they happen to be generals. But in terms of the war issue, given the fact that they've been at war and they truly understand the human dimension of it much more than anybody in Washington ever would, and what that does is that puts a premium on their resisting going to war unless all the other options are exhausted. And that will be part of the communication they'll be having with the other members of the national security team. The second thing is, if the president makes a decision to use force, likely what the generals would want to see is that there's a clear objective, that there's an end state in mind, and they would push for that. We cannot always get it because some things aren't that clear to begin with. But that's where they're coming from. So, and I don't listen. Generals and the military get stereotyped, and there's a little discrimination going on here and prejudice. I think also about senior military leaders may not be up to the task and all this kind of nonsense that we've heard in the past. The other thing that's operating here with Mr. Trump, I think, is he's just naturally connected to people who are very direct, straight-talking, have a degree of self-confidence, but they're not arrogant.
Right.
And they're proven. They've accomplished something.
Exactly. He likes a hard worker. He likes someone that's going to go out and get the job done. And it's beyond just, do we go to war, do we not go to war? I mean, these generals are going to have to deal with so many things on the world stage. Why are they uniquely qualified? What about them would make them different than maybe another pick that's not a general, for example?
Well, one of the things, when you get to the top of this institution in the United States military as a four-star general, you have run major organizations that have huge amount of civilians in it. There's a bureaucracy there. We focus on the war aspect of what they do, but the truth is they also spend a lot of time running these significantly large organizations. So when you give them a major bureaucracy like the Department of Defense, which it truly is, or you give them Homeland Security, another major bureaucracy with a lot of orphans in it, they have considerable public experience at dealing with this. And when you're running a public organization inside the United States military, it has congressional oversight all the time. You've got a media that's dogging you to try to find out everything that you've done in terms of making decisions, and those decisions that you haven't even made yet. So they're quite used to the environment that they're operating in.
Well, quickly, I want to get your thoughts on Rex Tillerson, the man that everyone is talking about this morning. Not officially announced, but very likely to be the next Secretary of State. What do you know about him? How do you think he would be in that job?
Well, I can't comment on that. I mean, what President-elect Trump is, he's seeing all the candidates, and he's the only one that's really doing that. He's got to take his own counsel and those around him. But I will say this about Secretary of State. We have not, Abby, we have not faced the kind of global security challenges on the scale we're facing them since World War II and the rise of the Soviet Union. And these challenges are diverse, they're complex, and they're dangerous. Radical Islam has morphed into a global jihad, and we're facing a major power competition with Russia and China that we have not seen in decades. And those challenges out there are significant.
And it might be helpful to have someone who understands those other nations. General Jack Keane, always good to have you with us. Good to see you, sir.
Good talking to you, Abby.
All right, coming up.
Republicans, he posted that video shot by an anonymous student. So he didn't shoot it, but he posted it, and he joins us this morning. Joshua, thanks for joining us. So tell us about what happened in that class. Did this student pop out their phone knowing she was going to make a rant like this? Is this a regular occasion in that class?
So to our knowledge, this is just a sporadic thing. But it's one that we were able to catch on tape, and this is something that really isn't just an Orange Coast College problem, but something that we know is happening across the United States. At the end of the day, this is one of the first instances where we've actually seen, after the election, a professor breaking down and melting down in class.
But Joshua, I mean, it's one thing to critique Trump's election. It's another thing to say those who voted for him are terrorists. That's not education. That's indoctrination. Is this something our students are hearing there and elsewhere every day?
You know, and with the events that have occurred today with the terrorist attack in Egypt and terrorist attack over in Turkey, those comments shouldn't be taken lightly at all, and one of the reasons why we've shared the video. And when it comes down to it, we are getting a lot of pushback, those conservatives in those classrooms, not just at Orange Coast College, but throughout the United States, of liberal bias existing where teachers are becoming preachers essentially, and really trying to hammer down on conservative thought.
I like that. Well said. Teachers as preachers. Well, the Teachers Union has posted something on Facebook in response to this video saying, and I'll put it up on the screen, this is an illegal recording without the permission of the instructor. The student will be identified and may be facing legal action. Now, they're taking this back now. We've got a statement from the union after that Facebook post where they say the union has never threatened legal action. They just threatened it, but now in their statement they're saying they never threatened legal action and does not intend to pursue legal action against the student. However, the college may choose to pursue discipline for violating the faculty syllabus, the Student Code of Conduct, and California Educational Code. So is this not, I mean, so doesn't that still feel like a threat?
Yeah, it does, and that's one of the reasons why we're going to be asking our school's president, Dennis Harkins, to give a statement saying that the student will not, receive any action by the school against them. We want to make sure that the student's protected. It's one of the reasons why we've kept that individual anonymous. And at the end of the day, we don't believe that a union or school administration should be targeting a student because of the video that student got exposing what's occurring in the classroom.
Joshua, we hear a lot of conversation.
Surprising.
We hear a lot of conversation about safe spaces on campus for different viewpoints. Do you feel like college campuses, at your college and elsewhere, are a safe space for conservatives, or are you open season for administrators and professors?
Well, at the end of the day, I'm all more than happy to have professors expressing their opinion and their thought. But when it crosses the line is when you call essentially the supporters of a candidate terrorists. To me, I think there should be dialogue in a classroom. I think there's a time and place for it. A human sexuality class is obviously not a time and place to be discussing the outcome of an election, let alone calling the students in that classroom terrorists by saying, the election was an act of terrorism. Well, if it's an act of terrorism, who are the terrorists? Obviously, the supporters who supported that candidate.
Yeah, you know what? I've seen some terrorists on the battlefield, and I'm looking at you right now, and you don't look like one. So I think you're good to go. I appreciate your courage on the college campus and sticking up for this, where tolerance becomes intolerance. We appreciate your courage in sticking up. Joshua Ricali Martinez, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
You got it. All right, he's not even the official nominee for Secretary of State, but Democrats are already planning their attack for Rex Tillerson as an agent of Vladimir Putin. Will that line of attack actually work? Juan Williams and Matt Schlapp, there you see them right there. They're going to debate that for us next. Plus, what do Reince Priebus and Bill O'Reilly think of Tillerson as the next top diplomat? We're going to find out because they're both going to join us live later in the show. And the first big...
And welcome back. President-elect Trump is expected to announce his Secretary of State pick very soon, and reports say it will most likely be Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson. But will his ties to Russia draw fire from Democrats as it raised red flags with Senator John McCain? Joining us now for a fair and balanced debate, co-host of The Five here on the Fox News Channel, Juan Williams, and the chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp. So, you guys, you heard Senator John McCain's concerns last night down there, I think, at the Army-Navy game, where he said that, look, we got to give him the benefit of the doubt here with this pick, but how closely he is tied to Vladimir Putin could be concerning. Juan, you think this could be a big problem?
It already is a big problem. I think that will be the focal point of confirmation hearings if Tillerson is the pick, in part because of the conflict between his business interest at Exxon and U.S. policy, in specific the sanctions we have on Russia right now. He's been a critic of those sanctions because it has impeded his ability to gain some of the money from drilling and deals that he has with Russia and with Putin. Similarly, he has, interest, for example, in Kurdistan that has angered the Iraqis. Again, a country we have tremendous interest in as Americans. So I think it's going to be a real focal point. And the additional factor with Putin is the differences right now between U.S. intelligence and Donald Trump, President-elect Trump, over whether or not Russia influenced the election.
Matt, obviously he was representing his company, Exxon, so it was in his business interest to do so. Can he make that pivot now? Do you think it'll be a problem for him?
Yeah, I think Juan's right. I think this is where the Democrats are going. They're not going here just on the potential nomination of Rex Tillerson, but they're still talking about why they lost the election, which is just unbelievable to me. And they're like that college professor. They need to just get over it. And, here's the thing. Rex Tillerson doesn't really, it's being mischaracterized. It's not really this just a strong relationship with the current head of the government in Russia, but it's a good relationship with the state of Russia. He has been dealing with various leaders in the state of Russia because during his time at Exxon, he was the lead liaison to this important country. So, I think it's great that we have people that will have good and strong relations with countries we have to find a way to deal with. And I don't know why that's a weakness. I consider it a strength.
Juan, you guys just need to get over it.
Well, I think that politicizing it is one way to approach it, because then it becomes, if you're for Tillerson, if you're a Republican, you're opposed to Tillerson, a Democrat. But I think what you're going to see is in any kind of confirmation hearing, and I think that's why, by the way, the Trump administration put Tillerson's name up this weekend without making any formal announcement. They want to see the public response.
Right.
And here we have, in this discussion, really the quintessence of what's going on. I think that there is more than politics at play here. I mean, this is just like what's going on with the intelligence community and Donald Trump. Mike Hayden, the former CIA director, someone who's very conservative, has said that what we see is an effort by the Trump team to simply say, we disagree with what all the intelligence community in the United States has concluded, which is that the Russians were involved in trying to influence the election because it doesn't fit with the Trump kind of conclusions and political assumptions. Matt, when you get into that game, when you politicize it, that's rough.
That's a little different, though. I mean, I think looking at how the Russians may have influenced the election, I think is totally legitimate. And I think Congress needs to ask questions, both of the current leadership of the CIA, which seems to be transfixed about this, but I want to know the facts. I think all voters want to know the facts. And I think Rex Tillerson, you know, when you pick a CEO for a big job like this, you got to look at all their policy positions, and he's been out there advocating for a carbon tax, and ExxonMobil's been advocating for a carbon tax. That makes me very worried. So, look, there's a lot of issues that need to be explored here when you pick somebody who's never been involved in politics before.
Juan and Matt, 10 seconds. Was Mitt Romney ever seriously considered for this?
Well, I hope so. Otherwise, he was just shamed and, you know, played with by President-elect Trump.
Matt?
Head fake.
Yeah, that's what I think, too.
Matt.
I think I've been saying it for weeks here on the show. Guys, great to see you this morning. Juan, Matt, great
to see you.
Have a great day. All right, Abby, over to you for some headlines.
Father Jonathan Morris is here with what the paper should keep in mind next time. What did you make of that comment?
That's great honesty.
Yeah.
And I love to hear, I can't believe I'm hearing what I'm hearing. He also said, and it should be noted, that they do have a very good religion reporter. Lori Goodstein, I think, does a very good job. She's very factual. I don't think she's biased against religion. But one thing is to be reporting on the facts of religious, you know, the religious phenomenon, right? This is what people do. Another thing is to understand the lived experience of God in somebody's life.
How did it affect this election?
Well, you know, I think there were a lot of people praying, first of all, for a good outcome.
There were. I've talked to many people around the country that said they sat there the night of the election holding hands with each other, praying that whatever happened was the right thing for this country.
Yes, and I think another thing where the New York Times and other news organizations really missed it, they said, oh, no, religious people certainly can't be for this guy Donald Trump because he's done this, this, and this. Whereas I think a lot of people say, hey, God uses very imperfect instruments all the time. And therefore, maybe this is the best thing for the country, even though the instrument is very
That's a great
weak.
point. And so an analysis of religion in the New York Times is very different than the lived experience of someone in, say, Middle America who feels like an imperfect vessel, as you said, could be the one that delivers America back to them. How do they recapture that understanding of how a lot of Americans see their faith?
Well, you have to invest resources, and you have to have invest resources not just to go report from as an outsider's point of view, but actually have people who might actually believe this crazy thing that 90% of Americans believe, and that is the existence of God.
Okay? Reporter.
And I'm not saying that the reporter does not.
Sure.
What I'm saying is it's a very different thing. Also to have opinions of, you know, people writing opinions in the New York Times who might be those crazy Midwesterners, those flyover states who believe that God is real and is providential in our lives.
Well, there's some other people who believe that climate change is real. And now the Catholic Church is getting involved in the climate change controversy. New guidelines issued to priests state that the members of the clergy should be promoters of and appropriate care for everything connected to the protection of creation. They're going to have to basically promote climate change, talk about climate change.
Breaking news. The Vatican believes in taking care of creation. That goes right back to Genesis. We were talking about this before. One thing is, I might not agree with the Pope or with another bishop or another priest or another Catholic on the specifics of, for example, the science of global warming. I may or may not. That's not the issue here. The issue is that we have to recognize that if the Earth is not being taken care of, it affects us human beings, and it especially affects the poor.
But this goes further. I mean, this is in it. He talks about climate change. I mean, do people want to go to mass and hear about climate change? What feels like a political subject?
I will be speaking on it for a good 45 minutes in my homily today.
Oh, you will. What do you say?
Why does it have to be?
No, you're not.
Why does climate change? Why does climate change have to be political? I mean, that's the question I always wrestle with. Why? I mean,
well, why does that have to be political?
Right. Why does it turn political? Why does it have to be?
Exactly. If science tells us that climate change is affecting people's lives, okay? I'm not a scientist. I don't know exactly how it is or isn't. But if it is, and if it's especially affecting the poor, of course people of religion and all of us should be speaking out against what is causing it. And that's a whole other question. What is causing it? Whether it's earthquakes or whether it's using aerosol bottles, I'm not exactly sure.
Pollution from China.
But we do have to take care of the creation.
That's bad over there.
Yeah.
Pollution.
I feel like you would handle that
Exactly.
subject well.
Father Jonathan Morris, always good to have you.
Thank you very much. Happy Sunday.
All right, coming up here on the show.
Yeah, he is fresh off his exclusive interview with President-elect Trump. We are going to talk to Chris Wallace in this next hour, and he's not the only big guest joining us. Trump's incoming chief of staff, Reince Priebus, will also be here, along with Bill O'Reilly. It's a big 2 hours to come.
But up next, like it or not, the first winter storm is...
Chris Wallace, the host of Fox News Sunday. Good morning, Chris. Good to see you.
Morning, Chris.
Great to see you guys. It was quite a day yesterday.
Yeah.
We went to the Trump Tower, sat down for an exclusive interview with Mr. Trump, and then went on a road trip, went on the presidential motorcade through the streets of New York to Trump Force One, which was kind of a treat, to the Army-Navy game. And I got to tell you, he was being received there as the commander-in-chief. So
wow.
I think you'll see at the top of the hour a really extraordinary and unique look at the man who's going to be our president in less than 6 weeks.
What else came out of that interview? Because we've only seen that clip. We've only been playing that brief part about Rex Tillerson. What else came out of it that stuck out to you?
Well, I'm not going to. I'll tell you some of the subjects. I'm not going to give you all the answers because you got to watch the show. But we begin with the real controversy right now over this report that the CIA has concluded that Russia was not just trying to destabilize the election, undermine confidence in it, but in fact was actively working to elect Donald Trump president. I will tell you, he's not very happy about that, and he doesn't believe it. But you'll have to see what he has to say in the show. We talked about cabinet picks. We talked about his agenda, the phone call with the Taiwanese, the idea of a president calling up corporate executives and saying, you know, this is how you should run your business. He also, even though he's going to hold a news conference on Thursday, he really gives an insight as to what he's going to do on this question of separating himself from the Trump businesses.
I'm just curious, because this interview, you didn't think that you were going to be flying on his airplane later in the afternoon, going in the motorcade. You thought you were going to be going for this one interview, and then it spills into a whole day. And you said that this really gave you some insight into the Trump transition team right now. What was that like? I want to pull the curtain back a little bit.
I have to tell you, no, we did know that we were going to do the whole deal, the interview, and that, yes, we did know that. But it was great, and I have to say, because a lot of these people, I don't know about you guys, but I've been having trouble getting on the phone. But when I got onto the Trump Force One, there was Reince Priebus, the new chief of staff, Steve Bannon, the senior advisor, Michael Flynn, the national security advisor. Interestingly, Rudy Giuliani, who had just taken himself out of contention. And I got to spend a little time with all of them. One of the interesting things, and I don't know if this was show or legitimate, but here's Trump and all of these reports about Rex Tillerson being his choice for Secretary of State. He was polling members of his, kitchen cabinet, of his top advisor, his White House staff, about who do you think should be the Secretary of State. So maybe he's decided, but I have the sense that, until the hammer comes down, things are still up for grabs.
Chris, you got the sense that he feels some have commented that he almost is becoming the commander-in-chief before he is. Do you get that sense that he's owning that title now?
Absolutely. Well, not the title, the job. There's no question in my mind about that. And that was one of the things that was most striking to me. He doesn't seem at all overwhelmed by the job or the responsibilities. He seemed utterly comfortable with not just the trappings, but the substance of power and the decisions that he's going to have to make. I mean, just going to the Army-Navy game, look, there were thousands of midshipmen and cadets there, young men and women. He may have to send them into battle at some point. We hope not, but it's certainly possible. And while not comfortable with that, he understands the responsibility and accepts it.
Fascinating interview. We will be watching Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace's exclusive interview with the president-elect.
Good timing on that one, sir.
9 a.m. Eastern Time. Check your local listings for that. Chris,
Thanks,
great
Chris.
to see you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
All right, well, he did mention spending the day with Reince Priebus. What does he think of Rex Tillerson as the next top diplomat, the incoming chief of staff? Trump pledging to tackle tough business regulations.
On regulations, we're going to eliminate wasteful, job-killing regulations that undermine the ability of our workers and our companies to compete with the rest of the world. Big thing.
But is this a big thing for small companies? And what changes are America's business owners hoping for? Well, let's ask our panel this morning. Joining us now is Jerry Lynch, certified financial planner and founder of JFL Total Wealth Management. Heath Herzaga, financial analyst, and Butch Yamali, president and CEO of Dover Group. Good morning to three of you. Thanks for being here this morning. So first, let's go down the line and tell us what you do and what you hope that these new policies, how they will impact you. I'll start with you, Jerry. What do you do?
I'm a certified financial planner. I have a wealth management firm in Boonton, New Jersey, and we work a lot with individuals, and we also work a lot with business owners to incorporate retirement accounts, key man programs, and things like that. So I think a lot of what we're seeing is that business owners have been very concerned. All they want to do is focus on their business. They don't want to get involved with a lot of the details associated with keeping the government happy. And if you free up their time so they could focus on what they do best, I think we'll get a lot more production. Well,
as a financial analyst, Heath, one of the things that he continues to talk about is lowering income tax on businesses down to 15%. Tell us what you do.
I am a financial analyst. I'm also a research analyst, and I do research for hedge funds. But most importantly, I'm a woman business owner. And so when I saw that Linda McMahon was going to be the head of Small Business Administration, for me, that just sent off amazing signals, because she also is a woman who had a very small business in Connecticut, grew it into the multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar business that it is. She's very pro-women. She's very much about putting the SBA in a basically joining us in the 2016, making it a more fintech-centric company. When global mobile payment systems are over 50%, according to PayPal, you want to be a small business that's a part of that whole wave of fintech that's going on.
Which, tell us about you. What's your story?
I started a small business into a larger business, and
That's the American dream, right?
The American dream, and it was all because of the way the government operated. When Obama took over, he just killed us with his crazy Obamacare. I'm just so happy to see that Trump's aligning himself with real business people, not people that just are lifelong politicians that have a business background. Has no such thing. The people that he's bringing in now are going to be strong and be very helpful, rolling back regulations and helping you grow and give you a further opportunity. That will help give people more jobs. It's the right way to do it.
Business optimism has gone up, 10%, I think,
since
July. And, I was in Iowa 2 days ago where he was as part of his thank you tour. And one of the things that stuck out to me, he said, my presidency is going to be very simple. It's going to be about two things. It's going to be about buy American, hire American. Jerry, how does that impact you? How do you think about that?
Well, one of the biggest issues is that the cost of doing business in the United States has been substantially higher than what it is in other parts of the world. And, take example medical. If I hire a person right now and put them on a family plan for medical, it costs me between $2,000 and $2,500 a month to have them on a medical plan. If they're making $30,000 or $40,000, it almost costs me as much to have them on a medical plan as it does to hire them as an employee. If the cost of doing business goes down, it means that I free up money, I can hire more people, and I could do things to help people in our community. And that's really what any business owner wants to do.
That's why expanding is important.
Essentially what he's saying is let's just let small businesses do what they do best.
Sure.
You mentioned Obamacare, and I can't tell you when I'm traveling the country talking to voters, small business owners, how difficult it is for them to do what they do.
They think it's me. They think I'm the owner of the business. I gave them this health plan. I have nothing to do with it. And the sad thing is that
you get the blame.
Of course, and the government agencies, they're not subject to Obamacare. They have this great plan, but we're subject to it, and we're stuck with it. And now, hopefully, Trump will open the door to giving the right health care again.
I think too, in terms of loans as well. Trump said that he wants to deregulate a lot in terms of Dodd-Frank, and a lot of that. Yes, while that's going to be a lot of heavy lifting in order to completely unravel that, there needs to be a better system in place so that small business owners have access to capital, because as we all know, as small business owners, you need that capital in order to grow or to even at least establish a foundation.
It's a good choice for that, because McMahon now is like a marketing expert, that whole family. It's not a little weird with the wrestling corporation, but they understand business. They grew a business. They're
literally from
genius.
a small, tiny
way ahead of
company in Connecticut to what it is now. I was on the roadshow when I worked at Bear Stearns. It's a pretty amazing company.
Because who they pick, they're going to be dealing with it day in and day out.
That's right.
And that gives you the sense that he's taking this very, very seriously.
And very pro-women, too. I love the fact that she's for small business
and
women
you know how important that is and what
it
you
is
do
very important. It is very to have someone on your side like that. That is a really big deal.
All right, guys, thanks for being here this morning. Thanks for waking up so early for us. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, what does Reince Priebus think of Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson as the next top diplomat? The incoming chief of state questioned their own sanity, and that's precisely what Trump is doing to this country. Oof.
Interesting. Well, now we are now joined by the incoming White House chief of staff, Reince Priebus. Good morning, Mr. Priebus. How are you?
Hey, doing great, everyone.
Great.
Good
Thanks
morning.
Thanks for joining us. Well, if you're watching another network this morning, you're seeing some of the hysterics around suggestions that Russian manipulation is rampant in our election process. The Washington Post over the weekend posting a story that said that that this process throughout has been manipulated potentially by Russia, and that they did it to benefit Donald Trump. That ultimately there's a relationship there or a direct connection, something that the Trump campaign should own up to. What do you say to these reports that are effectively, are they trying to delegitimize a Trump presidency? And do they have evidence to prove that Russia somehow was sided with this campaign?
Well, I can tell you one thing. Russia didn't tell Hillary to ignore Wisconsin and Michigan and half of the Midwest. So, first of all, it's ridiculous because the entire report is based on a fundamental fact. The report says that the RNC was hacked and the DNC was hacked, and because only DNC emails were used to undercut Hillary Clinton, therefore it must be conclusive that whoever did the hacking was purposely trying to help Donald Trump. Here's the problem. The RNC wasn't hacked. The FBI had come into the RNC months ago when this all happened, reviewed all of our systems. We put hacking detection systems in place, and the conclusion was we were not hacked. And when this thing broke the other day, we went back to the source at the FBI, and again, we're told that no, you were not hacked. And so, look, it just isn't true.
Well, there are stories
and
out
so the
there
only
that,
other, go ahead.
Well, there are stories out there that are saying that you were, in fact, we had Sean Spicer on as well yesterday, and he said the same thing you're saying, that the RNC was not hacked. Where are these sources coming from when people are reading that the RNC was in fact hacked? Why is there such a disconnect there?
Well, but look, that's a good question. But it's amazing that the story was run with based on the fact that there was all unnamed sources. The second part about this article said that the actual source that they had was not conclusive. So they ran with an inconclusive, unnamed source that the RNC was hacked when the RNC wasn't hacked, which is all part of this, I would imagine, this media play that somehow a 306 electoral vote landslide is somehow not legitimate. And, it's an amazing thing. When you look back a month ago, the media was in freak-out mode because Donald Trump said he wanted to wait and see how the election went before he, conceded in the second debate that if you lose the election, Mr. Trump, are you going to concede to Hillary Clinton? And he said, no, I'm not prepared to concede. And everyone went bananas. And now he won fairly easily, and everyone is now trying to take that victory away. I think it's insanity.
We want to give the opportunity to make the announcement right here, if you'd like, for Secretary of State. Will it be Rex Tillerson, the CEO of Exxon?
We're not making any announcements today.
Okay.
He's got the president-elect has incredible choices in front of him.
Well, it sounds like he's very, very close.
And other. Well, I think it's getting close, sure, but our job is to present the choices, make sure he has intelligent options in front of him, and then ultimately it's his decision, and when he finally pulls the trigger, we'll put out an announcement.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, are there concerns at all? Because Senator McCain has come out recently and said it could be a tough confirmation process. Not to get ahead of ourselves on Rex Tillerson, I know you said the announcement is still pending, but would there be any concerns about confirmation in light of some of his business connections with Russia, which some have criticized, but others have said would be an asset? Do you have any concerns about confirmation?
No, I don't have any concerns. I mean, first of all, let's play the hypothetical, even though, again, it's not, no announcement's coming. But here's a guy who has built a gem of a company, one of the biggest companies in the world, who has relationships across the world, who has to have relationships across the world in order to be successful. And you know, we have huge problems in this world, and I think this idea that somehow we're going to solve these problems by ignoring people and not communicating with people, having no decent relationships with people that, yes, we have strategic issues to deal with, is somehow a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. Here's a guy who, I mean, if you look at his tenure on the Boy Scouts, on his philanthropy, on things that he's done across the world, the deals that he's struck, it's exactly the kind of person that would probably make a great Secretary of State. But again, we're not making that announcement, but the idea that somehow this guy is not a good pick is insane.
Well, I want to get you on the record on this then, which is Mitt Romney. Obviously, the news reports over the past few hours, past few days around Rex Tillerson, all signs seem to be pointing in that direction. Has the president-elect spoken to Mitt Romney over the past 24 hours?
And is he out of the running?
I don't know about the 24 hours, but I think maybe the last 48 hours he has, and he communicates with all of these candidates quite regularly. And so you guys just have to wait at the edge of your seat to find out. But I think they're all very good choices.
Well, and then John Bolton as well is being, talked about as the #2 at the State Department, someone that could round out someone like a Rex Tillerson. How real is that?
Look, we had a great meeting with Ambassador Bolton, and that was, I think, the middle of last week, and it was viewed very strong for either the #1 or the Deputy Secretary spot. It's yet to be seen, but at least what you should take from this is that President-elect Trump is talking to a vast array of people, and I can assure everyone that it's all about putting America first and making sure the right set of people are in the right cabinet positions in order to make sure that America is first across the world and that every American watching this knows that their life and their future is what he has in their mind.
Well, Mr. Chairman, last night the president-elect attended the Army-Navy game to huge ovations and cheers of folks there. First president-elect to do so. And some have said he's stepping into very comfortably the commander-in-chief role.
Chris Wallace said that.
Yeah, Chris Wallace said it early on in our show. You were there with him as well, a bunch of others from his newly formed team. What's your sense of how he's owning that role and stepping in as commander-in-chief and the experience last night at that Army-Navy game?
It's just incredible. I think that immediately on election night or election morning, I guess it is I think that responsibility and that weight of being president really hit President-elect Trump. And I think ever since then, he's just been on this mission to assure every American that no matter who you are, where you come from, what your race, gender, background, he's for you. And at the Army-Navy game was just incredible. The military folks just... I mean, it's like they were just in love with him, and he was in love with them. There was one instance, I'll tell you, it was just who Donald Trump is. Some folks put a napkin outside of their suite, and it said, "We love Trump." And, just a pen, just a napkin, and put him in front of 2 suites. And President-elect Trump said, "Hey, hang on, guys, Secret Service and everything. Just open the door." Walked in and said, "Guys, I hope you're having a great time," and the suite just erupted. And he did that in another suite as well. And so this is who he is. And I think that for people who don't know him, they're going to get to know him. And if you saw the CBS commentary just before the third quarter with Vern Lundquist, I mean, he has an incredible knack of connecting with people.
Mr. Chairman, great to see you this morning.
We're not going to leave it there. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you soon.
We'll be right back. Up on the cabinet selection process. See that? See that? Man. Moving and shaking. Just like the Trump transition team is doing right now, and looking at the Secretary of State position, all eyes on that position, and we may get an announcement as early as tomorrow or Tuesday. And could it be Rex Tillerson? That seems to be the main frontrunner at this point. Who is he? He's the CEO of Exxon, arguably the largest company in the world.
Yes, that's about all that many people know about him, because he hasn't been in politics at all during his life. He's worked at Exxon his entire life, just working his way up the ladder.
started as an engineer a couple of decades ago, worked his way up to CEO. He's also been involved with Boy Scouts of America, has given some political donations, but is, part of what Trump has said he really likes about him are his international connections, his ability. He's reached a deal with Russia in the past over oil opportunities there and elsewhere, and it sees it as kind of an outside-the-box type of pick. It's also, it's not officially announced, but it's been rumored that that John Bolton, Ambassador John Bolton, could be the deputy to
Which
him.
could sort of balance out that dynamic because as CEO, as you mentioned, he knows sort of how to handle things on the world stage, how to work with other leaders of countries. But John Bolton obviously understands the State Department. He might know about certain parts of the world that the CEO of Exxon isn't as familiar with.
Trump said, look, he's a guy. The company that's even like below his is like not even half as strong as Exxon. This guy has built a massive company. President-elect Donald Trump on Fox News Sunday talking about Rex Tillerson and how huge this guy is.
Let me ask you about Rex Tillerson, head of ExxonMobil. Why does a business executive make sense as the chief diplomat?
Well, in his case, he's much more than a business executive. I mean, he's a world-class player. He's in charge of, I guess, the largest company in the world. He's in charge of an oil company that's pretty much double the size of his next nearest competitor. It's been a company that's been unbelievably managed. And to me, a great advantage is he knows many of the players, and he knows them well. He does massive deals in Russia. He does massive deals for the company, not for himself, for the company.
If you step back and look at this pick and others, it feels Donald Trump wants people at the top of their game, who have won, who have made the most money, who have shown a demonstrated record of success.
Yeah, he's not going through like the playbook of how things have been done in the past. It seems like he is going about this totally his own way. When we've asked any of his close advisors, they're like, only President-elect Trump knows what's going on and what he's doing because it will come from him and how he feels in these meetings with people.
Yeah, he's not like looking for losers to give him a shot. Hey, I'm going to dust you off a little bit. He wants guys at the top of his game. Ambassador John Bolton, friend of the show, we talked to him this weekend. He looks like he could be in that second spot, the deputy at the State Department. We asked Governor Mike Huckabee about that selection earlier, and here's what the governor had to say.
Brilliant choice, because John not only knows where the bodies are buried, he probably buried a few. And my guess is, knowing John, when he gets there, he'll bury quite a few more, and he may take the fog out of Foggy Bottom, which is very, very important.
He knows where the bodies are buried.
That's Arkansas for he thinks it's a good choice.
They have buried a few, too.
Right. But I think he makes a great point, though, and having Ambassador John Bolton who can help him navigate the State Department, because it is complicated. You have a lot of people that are working for you, and clearly he's going in as a CEO that has a lot of assets, but he doesn't know everything about what this job would entail.
The calcified bureaucracy of the State Department is a serious problem for any incoming administrator. Having someone like Bolton that understands that and can deal with it is a pretty important role.
And also, I'm sure that Bolton will suggest to him, don't set up your own private email server. That would probably be advice he'd give.
That might be high on the memo.
It might be list. But meanwhile, this discussion this morning about Russia, all this talk about whether Rex Tillerson's association with Vladimir Putin as it relates to that, also the CIA coming out over the weekend in that report in the Washington Post saying that Russia hacked the DNC and the RNC. We talked to Sean Spicer yesterday from the RNC. I asked him that question. I said, can you say 100% that you weren't hacked? He said, absolutely not. We were not hacked 100%. And the same thing that Reince Priebus just said the same thing on our show.
Yeah, and Donald Trump has spoken out about it too, again, about this CIA report. Anonymous sources leaked to the Washington Post, purportedly a report that says this hacking occurred. This is what Donald Trump said about it yesterday. He said, these are the same people, meaning the CIA or the folks that leaked it, that said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. The election ended a long time ago in one of the biggest electoral college victories in history. It's now time to move on and make America great again. So pushing back pretty hard.
And you mentioned we had Reince Priebus on just a few moments ago, and of course we had to ask him about this.
Right.
And he also denied it, like Sean Spicer did, and said, no, that the RNC was not hacked. And he put the blame on others in the media, using this as an excuse to basically not accept the election results. Here's what he said about that.
It's amazing that the story was run with based on the fact that there was all unnamed sources. The second part about this article said that the actual source that they had was not conclusive. So they ran with an inconclusive, unnamed source that the RNC was hacked when the RNC wasn't hacked, which is all part of this, I would imagine, this media play that somehow a 306 electoral vote landslide is somehow not legitimate.
Inconclusive, unnamed source. The FBI's come out and said there's no evidence of this necessarily. This feels like and looks like an effort to delegitimize Donald Trump.
Well, it's troubling, too, from the intelligence community. So the CIA comes out and leaks the story.
It's leaked anonymously,
right,
which is not a report.
And then the FBI shoots it down. So the FBI shooting down a CIA report, that's not healthy.
And what's the bottom line on all of it? Well, maybe Donald Trump shouldn't be president. I mean, it's muddying the waters, I feel like, from opponents, Democrats or others, who want to delegitimize him. That's what it's about.
It's also a boy who cried wolf problem, too, because then when it does happen, you know, people are going to be all riled up about it, and they're not going to focus on it.
Right. Meanwhile, the FBI is coming out saying we're not going to prosecute this report. So we'll see how all of this plays out. But yesterday was a huge day because it was Army versus Navy. It was a game, Pete, that you went to. Obviously, you were rooting for Army.
Baltimore.
14 big win for yours. Woof. Pete, over to you.
Ouch. All right. President-elect Trump is expected to announce his Secretary of State pick very soon. And it is reported, to potentially be Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson to head up the State Department. But will his ties to Russia draw fire from Democrats? Joining us now is 2008 presidential candidate and former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson. Governor, thanks for joining us this morning. So it looks like the pick will be Rex Tillerson. What is the response from the Democratic side of the aisle to that pick?
Well, I think it's also going to include Senator McCain, Senator Graham, Republicans. I believe it would be a very bad choice. Here's the reason. And by the way, I think Giuliani, Romney, Senator Corker would have been very sensible choices. I just think the ties to Russia that Rex Tillerson has, not just through ExxonMobil, the deals he's made, but the fact that he's come out against sanctions towards Russia on Crimea, on Ukraine. It's too cozy a relationship at a time when the CIA, our own intelligence agency, we spend $70 billion a year telling us that the Russians interfered in the election to the support of the Republicans. Now, Trump would have won anyway. I'm not disputing that. But that's really a major concern, that cozy relationship with Putin and Russia.
Governor, we've got a bit of a delay. We'll work through it, no problem. But what is it about a business background, a guy who makes deals, a guy who has relationships with people across the globe? Why is that a bad thing, but political experience like John Kerry or Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State, that's sacrosanct? Because they've had relationships, or the Clinton Foundation, that created complications. Why would we not want someone with relationships, even with a Vladimir Putin, so that we can manipulate or deal with a world that's very complicated? What's wrong with business relationships? Why can't we handle that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but commercial oil negotiations is different than diplomacy. You know, you basically, when you're making commercial relationships on oil with Yemen, with Russia, around the world, and yeah, he knows a lot of foreign leaders, but this is not diplomacy. This is not military issues. This is not sensitive peacekeeping issues. So there's a big difference. You want to have experience in that job. You want to have some kind of a knowledge of how working governments work. Well, I mean, internally, how the State Department works.
The same kind of experience that presumably...
So I believe this is a problem.
The same kind of experience that presumably Barack Obama didn't have before he became president. You know, so I mean, it's not as if experience in particular space is absolutely what you need to have. But speaking of experience, Ambassador Bolton is rumored to be the deputy there as well. Would that shore up any concerns that you have, legitimate or otherwise, that you've got someone that understands the State Department, understands diplomacy, and will come alongside this businessman who has relationships to do the things that Donald Trump wants to get done on the world stage?
Well, John Bolton's a little hard line for me, his positions, but he does have experience. He was at the UN, as I was, a UN ambassador, so he knows the UN system. He knows the State Department. That would be, for me, a positive, but that hasn't happened yet. My hope is that Vice President-elect Mike Pence, who knows the system, will step in and say, this is not a good choice as Secretary of State, that somehow he is the sensible guy out there. I don't know if this is going to happen. I have no inside information, but I worry about this Tillerson appointment. I don't know the guy. I hear he's a very good man, But it's not the same. Commercial negotiations are not the same as sensitive diplomatic relations, and the optics also. The head of ExxonMobil, the biggest oil giant in the world, running American diplomacy. I don't think that's a good optic for this country.
Opponents have used oil baron or oil tycoon as if running an oil company is an evil thing, as opposed to providing energy for people around the world so they can power the way they live their lives. But if you look at the track record of John Kerry and Hillary Clinton, former secretaries of state under this president, if you look at the world we live in right now, it's not a peaceful place. America's role has been diminished. It's been chaos and refugees around the globe. Why should we not hand the keys to someone who's made deals, who's been a businessman, who's gotten things done, as opposed to trying what we've done in the past, which is hand it over to a senator or someone who's been in Washington and has a Washington view? Why is not an outside look, a new look, a good thing for this country?
Well, I'm not condemning business relationships, an outside look. I'm just concerned of the biggest oil company in the world. And these are deals that the world around has concern with. I mean, we want climate change. We want renewable energy. I mean, these are fossil fuel deals. Okay, I'm not condemning it. I'm just saying that is not where the world is heading. What is going to be his position on climate change? Is he going to try to get rid of the Paris Agreement, which was almost 180 countries? Is he going to be against sanctions on Russia? I mean, we have to sanction Russia for their behavior in Ukraine and Crimea with NATO across these personal ties. He's gotten all these awards. Yeah. Concern me. I got to tell you, I would have been okay with Romney, with Giuliani, who's respected abroad, Senator Corker. So I hope this doesn't happen, but it looks like it will.
Well, Governor, we're going to have to leave it right there. It's not clear, however, that climate change is the future, or that policy is the future, as opposed to just wanting America to be respected on the global stage. I appreciate your perspective this morning and for joining us on Fox & Friends. Thank you, Governor Bill Richardson. Already attacking Rex Tillerson as a big oil baron and billionaire tied to Putin.
But what other world leaders does he have a strong relationship with, and how would this impact his role? Here to weigh in, Sunday Morning Futures host Maria Bartiromo. Always good to have you on the couch.
And I also have my own order of friendship, which I just bestowed to you.
And I'll take it. I'll take it.
The mainstream media this morning, or over the past 2 days, really painting this, picture of this pick as a potential, big problem. This ties to Vladimir Putin. This is going to be a really big problem for him.
But you actually know him. You've interviewed him, you said, a number of times.
I have interviewed him a number of times as the CEO of ExxonMobil, for sure. Look, I think this is an incredibly savvy pick. The truth is the head of the largest company in the world, the head of the largest oil company in the world, has incredibly deep relationships across the world. Now, ExxonMobil does business in 50 countries. Yes, Vladimir Putin is probably one of the most important relationships that he has, but he's got relationships across the world with the Saudis, with Yemen, with anywhere basically where there is a heavy oil-rich field. And so he's had to do deals with hostile dictators. He's had to get permitting and entrees into countries to drill for their oil. So he's had to do negotiating, and he knows where the hot spots across the world are.
Would Putin want to mess
like
with him?
Pete, because obviously coming from the military, but from a different perspective. I'm sorry.
Would Putin want to mess with him?
I don't think so. That's the thing. I don't think Putin wants to be on the other side of this guy. I mean, I would think that the relationship or rapport that he has in Russia, having, 10 deals right now in Russia, I think is actually a positive. So, of course, the left is going to come up with all sorts of ideas as far as why this is the wrong pick. Actually, I think it shows an incredible strategy on Donald Trump's part.
And, Maria, outside of Russia, what other things does it bring to the table? Relationships or other angles that he'll take that would benefit America?
Well, bottom line, Pete, oil is money. Okay, so he's had oil as his negotiating tool, as a way to get into some of these countries to drill for oil. So I think when you look at the oil-rich countries, that's a no-brainer. We know exactly the relationships that he's had and why that would be helpful. But it's also dealing with governments across the world, knowing where the terrorism and the hot spots are, would also be very positive. I think this is a very smart pick.
Where did he come from? Because and the media was left flat-footed on this. I was in our hallway. We have that chalkboard with the Secretary of State picks up. We got Mitt Romney up there. You got Rudy Giuliani. You have some other names up there.
He's not there.
He's not there. Apparently, this is just rumor and speculation, but apparently Condoleezza Rice has mentioned him. She's spoken with Trump about that and others. So they just talked about ExxonMobil being an important company for Donald Trump to speak with, to bring him in. I think initially the word was that they talked about him coming in and just talking to Trump about his relationships, about how he sees the world. But then the more they talked about it, they talked about, well, this actually could be great for the role.
All right, well, you've got a big show coming up, including Kellyanne Conway.
Exactly. Kellyanne Conway's coming out. We're going to talk with her live top of the show. Find out what really is behind this. I'll ask her that question. Where did Rex Tillerson's name come into this? Then we're going to talk with the House Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, on set, talking about his legislative priorities. Look, we know that he wants to get tax reform done. We know that he wants to get Obamacare repealed and replaced, and we know that border security are the priorities. But we're going to drill down on all of those. Also, Congressman Steve Scalise, obviously the Louisiana Senate race was important. Trump was there. That's his home state. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about his plans to repeal and replace Obamacare.
A big show which starts in 10 minutes right here on the Fox News channel. Don't change your channel. Maria, great to see you.
Love it. Always
Have a great Sunday.
Good morning.